We spoke about the idea of parents setting an example for their children, trying to instill values, Ahavas Torah, midos, and today we continue. We had said originally that the puzzling idea, the phenomenon that in the Sefer Bereshis, where Avraham Avinu talks to different people, the one he speaks to least of all is Yitzchak. And we mentioned there are only two psukim where we find that Avraham Avinu does speak to Yitzchak. In Perek Chav Beis, Pasuk Vav, Vayomer Yitzchak al Avraham Aviv, Vayomer Aviv, Vayomer Hineni V'ni. That's the first time we ever see Yaakov Avinu speak to Yitzchak. Vayomer Hineni V'ni. Vayomer Hinei Ha'isha Iti V'yaseh La'ola. Yitzchak says, there's the fire and the wood, and where is the sheep? Then again, Pasuk Ches, Vayomer Avraham Elokim Yir Elo Haseh La'ola B'ni. Hashem will show us, it says in Ola, my son. Vayelchu Shteim Yachdav. These are the only two times that we find that Avraham Avinu speaking to Yitzchak. In both cases, Avraham Avinu says the word B'ni. So the idea here is that B'ni is obviously a term of affection. And we had mentioned that obviously Avraham Avinu spoke to Yitzchak many times, but that the Torah is emphasizing that Avraham teaches by example. Here you see that when it does speak to his son, and he addresses him directly, he uses the word B'ni, which is an expression of endearment, an expression of belovedness. And that brings us to another yesod in Chinuch, another concept of Chinuch, which is that children need affection. And one of the things that I found as a common denominator among those who are either teens at risk or off the derech or getting ready to go off the derech. So there is no one cause. People try to identify the cause. What is the single cause? There is no one single cause. What I found to be the common denominator that Tzad HaShavah is that a lot of young men especially feel they did not get enough attention and or affection from their fathers. And a father has to know, mothers naturally tend to give the affection. The father has to know that his job is more than just giving the child money, if that much. That kids need a tremendous amount of time, tremendous amount of attention. Mothers are often going to shiurim to find out how to be better mothers. I would love to see one of these experts on chinuch walk into a room full of ladies and say, ladies, the best thing you can do is go home and spend time with your kids. Because that's the truth. The truth is the kids need time with their parents. And parents have to understand that there are no shortcuts. If they don't put in the time when the kids are younger, the kids are going to vie for that time. They're going to try to regain that attention, and they may do it in a way that is painful and frustrating down the line. There are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. Like the Baruch Hu created children to need their parents, and to want their parents' approval, and to want their parents' love and affection. And that's the rule. That's an immutable principle when it comes to Chinuch Habanim. Now, when a father has trouble showing affection, first of all, a father has to know that he has to show affection. Many fathers don't know that. Let's say a father does, he understands that he's got to show affection, he understands that he has to have a relationship with someone, he has trouble doing it. So there's a story, one of the experts in the Israeli yeshiva system, the Israeli yeshiva world, who he had a father came to him complaining he had two sons who were off the derech. So the expert said he wants to speak to the boys. So he spoke to the boys, and he asked the boys, what happened? What caused you to reject Yiddishkeit? And they said that our father never kissed us, which is symptomatic. It's only a certain sign that they obviously did not get enough affection. And so the guy called in the father to speak to the father. And he asked the father, is it true that you did not kiss your sons? And he said, yes, it's true. So he asked him, why? The father said, well, because I once read that the Chafetz Chaim never kissed his sons. So I don't know what the expert said to the father. I know what I would have said to the father. I would have said to the father, well, let's see you write a Mishnah Berurah first, then we can talk. All of a sudden he picked one thing that the Chafetz Chaim didn't do one hanhaga from a Chofetz Chaim, that's what he decided to emulate. So that's unfair and it's unreasonable, and obviously the man had trouble showing affection. If the father has trouble showing affection, what the father has to do is to speak to people and find out how do you show affection. He may not be naturally inclined that way, which is understandable, but then a father has to do whatever he can in order to somehow learn how to show affection. It's a good idea for a husband also to ask the wife, check with his wife if he's spending enough time with the kids, if he's giving them enough attention, and not just to see kids as either in the best scenario of negativity, bittul Torah, because he's so busy learning, or in the worst scenario, they are bittul of his bittul Torah. He would like to be Mevatel Torah or something more interested than his kids, and he sees his kids wasting his time wasting. The kids are not that. Kids are part of you. Kids are an extension of you, and a father has to see his children as needing his time. Obviously, if he's somebody who is into learning, so obviously there are times when the kids also have to learn that right now you can't bother daddy because daddy's learning. They have to learn that the learning is a value, obviously, but it has to be in an environment where the kids feel that they are number one and they're getting that affection from their father. The other terrible story, I love it. A guy at a Pesach Seder, he asked his 17-year-old son, was the youngest son there, and the room was full of guests. And the man was a very prominent individual, and he had a house full of guests. And when he came to the Manishtana, when he came to the Afikomen, he noticed his Afikomen had disappeared. And he was looking for the Afikomen. And when it came time to eat the Afikomen, he started asking, did anybody see the Afikomen? And his 17-year-old son stood up and said, Dad, I have the Afikomen. They said, what would you like? He thought it was very amusing. He figured he asked for a new car or something along those lines. And the kid started crying, the 17-year-old started crying, and said, Dad, right now in front of everybody, I would like you for the first time in my life to give me a kiss. So, obviously, I'm glad I wasn't at that Pesach Seder. I'm sure that the guests all found interesting spots on the table to stare at in that somewhat uncomfortable situation. But obviously the kid was hurting. And the father has to know he's going to have to spend time with he's going to have to spend time with his children, and he's going to have to show them affection. That is bread and butter for children. As I'll say, that somebody who whitens his teeth, somebody who whitens his teeth to his friend, to his fellow, it's as if he's giving him a cup of milk. So, Chazal are very precise in their Lashonos. So Chazal say that you whiten your teeth. If you smile to somebody, it's as if you're giving him a cup of milk. Now, normally, if a guest comes into your home, you may offer him a Pepsi, and you may offer him a cup of coffee, and you may offer him some Jack Daniels. Very few people offer a guest who would like a cup of milk. Because I'll say that it's as if you've given somebody a cup of milk, and what the Meforshim explain is, milk is the basic source of nourishment. And every human being has a certain need for emotional nourishment, no different than physical nourishment. A smile, when you smile at somebody, you greet somebody, that's a demonstration of your approval of that person. That is a basic need for human beings, and it's an especially basic need for children from their parents in general and from their fathers in particular. Therefore, the rule here is that the father obviously has to show that love make it clear to the children that love is there. They once asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, extending this principle a little further. They once asked Rav Moshe Feinstein, as a rule in raising children, what's more effective, leniency or stringency with kids? Which is more effective? So Rav Moshe writes in Igros Moshe that the first rule is there are no rules. First rule is there are no rules. Rav Moshe says it. But if you must adopt a rule, leniency seems to be more effective than stringency. And in our day and age particularly, where there are certain things that we are battling against, so a parent has to know that you have to save your bullets. The easiest word in the world to say to a child is no. Daddy, can I have this? No. Can I have that? No. Everything is easy to say no. No is the easiest thing in the world to say. You have to try to figure out, to force yourself to say yes, and that way when you have to say no, you'll be able to say no, the no will be accepted. So let's take an example. There are, nowadays, let's say there's a battle that we're fighting against in technology. So for example, we don't want our kids to have access to the internet. So if everything a parent has always said is no, you can't, no, 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 then when it comes to the internet or it comes to something, a driver's license at a young age or whatever it is that kids may want when they're teenagers, and the parent says no, they're likely to hear from their kids, well, you never let us have anything. Everything has always been a no. So the parent has to create a situation where it's yes. And that way, when they're able and have to pull out the no because there's something that is non-negotiable, then the no will carry much more effect. Take a concrete example. I remember when the rollerblades came out. Now, rollerblades statistically are the cause of the #1 reason for ending up in emergency rooms in the United States. Men who rollerblades were in were broken wrists as a result of rollerblades. So when my kid said to me he wants to get a pair of rollerblades, my first reaction is I'd rather he didn't. On the other hand, kids have to be kids. They have to have bicycles. Bicycles could also be dangerous. Everything's dangerous. So it's not what I would call dangerous. It certainly carries a risk. And you put on a helmet, you put on knee pads, and whatever it is you put on. So I said to the kid, look, I prefer not, but I'll get you the rollerblades. And I got him the rollerblades. Later on, when he wants something that it's absolutely a red line, I can say no, and then he can't say to me, well, Dad, you never got me anything. I said, well, yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I got you the rollerblades, which I really wasn't thrilled about. I got you a bicycle, a better bicycle than most of your friends have, and so on and so forth. Then you have the ability to pull a no, and the no has got to carry better authority with the kid because the kid realizes they're not just saying no because you got something. You say no because you're genuinely concerned for him, as opposed to you just don't feel like providing or doing. And therefore, in our day and age, especially where all the rules have changed, every generation says, well, when we were kids, yeah, but when you were kids doesn't apply to nowadays. When you were kids, telephones were attached to the wall, and people used to boil water in a kettle as opposed to electrocuting it. All sorts of things have changed since you were a kid. So that's not a valid comparison. In our day and age, where there's so much out there, and there's so many things we prefer the kids don't have, and then there are red lines what the kids absolutely must not have, the parent has to exercise very, very careful judgment here before just lashing out no, 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 no. Eventually a kid could rebel and then just do everything on its own. That's one of the rules. There's when I was in yeshiva years ago, in my year after high school, so there was a bacher in the yeshiva who sat in shir and never had a Gemara. He used to sit in shir without a Gemara, and he would pay attention, he would just listen, but he never had a Gemara. So I obviously realized something was up. And then one day I finally asked the Rebbe after shir, what's with Chaim? Why does Chaim never have a Gemara? So he said to me that Chaim's father, at an early age, Chaim at 5 years old was forced by his father to sit and learn Gemara while all the other kids were outside playing. And Chaim developed such a loathing for Gemara that to this day, he can't open a Gemara and look inside because it has such a negative association for him. It's a miracle he's able, in yeshiva at all, and it's a miracle he's able to listen to the Gemara shir, but he cannot open a Gemara and look in a Gemara. So parents always want, especially in the area of learning, we want our kids to develop. Very important to realize if you push too hard, it could work against you. You have to monitor things very carefully to determine how much is a kid really capable of. I don't remember if I mentioned in the previous year, sometimes parents, father wants to learn with his son, so there's generally a given that we're going to learn for an hour. Well, often an hour is too long, probably for the father, but it's certainly too long for the kid. And therefore, what a father is a wise father would make it a much shorter period of time to learn with the kid. Let's say it says we'll learn for 20 minutes, and then stop a minute or two early and tell them, you learned so well, we're going to stop early. And then chances are the kid's going to say, no, Dad, let's continue learning. Because he enjoyed it so much and he felt that the learning was not pressurized, and the father understands that he can't sit for too long, then ironically he'll ask to learn for longer. That is the rule. That's what Ramesha says. You can't be too tough on kids. Don't be too tough. Most things pass. You don't have to be reactive to everything that happens in the home. That's a rule. There was another incident I heard about a little girl 5-year-old girl had a birthday in Gan. So her mother baked brownies, and when she went to Gan, they gave out the brownies to all the little girls. The little girls were sitting around in the room, and the Ganenet got up, and she walked across the room, and she took the brownie, the little girl Miriam, the Ganenet took the brownie away from Miriam. So the mother looked at her, the mother who had baked the brownie, looked and said, why did you take the brownie away from her? She says, well, her parents don't let her have any sugar, and therefore she can't have the brownie. She said, come on, you gave her the brownie already, you can't take it out of her hands like that, that's ridiculous. He said, no, I gave her a brownie one time, I did it, her mother called me up, I got such an earful, I decided I'm never going to do it again. So she took away the brownie from the girl. Oh, all the little girls are happily chomping away, and here's little Miriam who's sitting there crying. And then all the kids got up, they went into the playroom. They're all sitting around in the playroom where they have the toys and the various things that they keep them busy. And the Ganenet notices that little Miriam is not there. So she goes back to the other room to look for her. And there's Miriam crawling around under the table, eating the crumbs that had fallen from the brownies of the other girls. So all parents want their kids to not repeat the mistakes that they've made and to live the perfect life. We don't want our kids to do the things we've done wrong. The facts of life are, it doesn't work that way. Kids are going to be not perfect. And the parent who is too rigid on the child, so the child is going to end up crawling around on the floor eating brownies, which is worse, that they should have a brownie or that they should crawl around on the floor eating crumbs in front of the kids' brownies. And therefore, parents have to be very, very careful. Obviously, we don't want kids to eat too much sugar. We don't want them to eat too much unhealthy food and so on and so forth. Number one, we do. Number two, that's being a kid. And sometimes a mother, when a kid comes home from cheder, a little boy comes home from cheder, and they have a siyum. So the mother will take his bag of goodies. She'll eat all the chocolates and leave him to eat the raisins and the almonds. All she's doing is she's teaching that child that he better eat the chocolate before he gets home, because otherwise his mother's going to take it away. So a parent has to be reasonable on all fronts, whether it's the learning, whether it's the general misbehavior. Kids are kids. A parent cannot be too tough on a child for goofing around. There's a difference between a child having fun and a child getting wild. Wildness carries a certain element of danger. There's risk. The child could fall, chas v'shalom. So then a parent has to cut the wildness, to not let a kid giggle or to not let a kid run around and have a good time. Even though it's not what the parent wants, parents have to learn you can't be too tough. Children are children, they're not adults. And even with adults are often are more difficult to deal with than children. So the rule is, according to Rabbi Moshe, that one will succeed more through leniency and love than he will when it comes to rigidity. And a child who breaks something, there are two types of breaking. There's breaking something intentionally or recklessly, better regularly intentionally, so not recklessly, and there's breaking something by accident. So a bar mitzvah boy, he has a brand new suit, he sits down, and a nail rips his pants. So, many times the father says, well, that's too bad. You ripped it, it's too bad, you're going to have to learn to live with it. Now, the truth of the matter is that it's patently unfair. Accidents happen. Father also has ripped his pants or sat in gum or dripped oil on his pants and ruined a pair of pants, and he goes out and buys a new pair of pants. He's not going to walk around with ripped pants. Accidents happen, and when they happen, they cost money, and they're annoying. So, if a kid was genuinely an accident, that's one thing. The kid was reckless, okay, then he has to sometimes learn not to be reckless, and he's going to have to learn a bit of a rougher lesson. But parents have to be reasonable. Just because he's a kid doesn't mean he's not. Accidents aren't going to happen. The same thing when it comes to, there's a Gemara that says one of the Amoraim used to give his son broken kelim to break and see how they, what we would call nowadays, see how they work. Because kids have that curiosity, they like to take things apart. So if a kid takes something apart, that's very natural, that's very normal. A parent has to keep that in proper perspective. A child has to be taught not to do that. But it can't be with an unreasonable lashing out. And as a rule, parents have to know to control a child is not the same thing as being mechanech a child. To control a child is not difficult. To be mechanech a child, that's our job. I just found out one story, I think it's a well-known story, but Reuben Feinstein, Moshe Feinstein's youngest son, he once made a bar mitzvah for his son. And Reb Moshe, the Zayda, was not able to be at the bar mitzvah because he had some sort of meeting with the Moetzes Chachmei Torah, something that kept him away from the bar mitzvah. So somebody asked Reb Reuven how he felt about his father not being at the bar mitzvah. So Reb Reuven said, look, obviously, I would have preferred that my father be there. It was not easy for me that he wasn't. But I understand it because I know that my father loves me. And since my father loves me, I understand if he wasn't at the bar mitzvah, he couldn't be there. So they said to Reuben, how do you know that your father loves you? So he said, well, there are 3 ways that I know. There are 3 reasons. I'll give you 3 examples. He said when he was a little boy, they used to go away to the Catskills or the Bungalow Colony, wherever it was, and he had a learning session with Reb Moshe every day. And every day a truck would come in that had some sort of hay in the back of the truck, and Reb Moshe knew that Reb Reuven, as a little boy, liked to ride in the truck, and that was one of the things he looked forward to every day. One day the truck came in during the learning session, and Reb Reuven saw the truck come in, but now he's learning with his father, and Reb Moshe turned to him and he said, you enjoy the ride, go, and the ride will make up the learning later. So he said that was the number 1 way that I knew, example number 1. Example number 2, that my father, being the Gadol Hador, we always had very prominent people in the home, Rabbanim and public officials and so forth. Yet, no matter who was in the home, when we sat down on Shabbos, no matter who the guests were, I always sat next to my father. The seat next to my father was for me. It didn't matter who else the guests were. That was example number 2, that my father loved. And example number 3 was that in the winter mornings it was very, very cold, and we had to get up in the morning. We didn't have heating in the house. We had heating, but the house was cold. And my father would wake me up, and he would actually dress me under the blanket. But before he dressed me, he took my pants and he put them on the radiator to warm them up. And then he took the warm pair of pants and he put them on me under the blanket. That's how I know my father loved me. So Reb Moshe did pretty well with his sons. And the lesson for us is that a father has to show the son love and affection. Parents have to show love and affection in a concrete way. And that is a crucial step in succeeding in Chinuch the way we would like.